Yes, sir, I do. Your first and last name, and spell it for the court. Yes, sir. Good morning. My first name is Howard, spelled Howard. Last name is Griffin. That's Griffin, and I am a junior.
Good morning, Investigator Griffin. How are you doing, sir?
Good morning.
Can you tell the jury where did you come in from to testify?
I flew in from the Dallas-Fort Worth area in Texas.
What do you do in that area?
I'm actually a detective for a small agency. The city is called Plano, and I'm currently a detective for that agency.
What kind of cases do you work for the Plano Police Department in Texas?
For Plano Police Department, I'm assigned to a unit called the Capers Unit, and what that simply means is any crime against a person, so it could be a misdemeanor or a felony. I'd be a detective that would investigate that kind of crime.
How long have you been with that department?
I've been with Plano since April of 2000.
Now, did you ever work for any other agencies before then?
I did. I started my law enforcement career with the city of Atlanta, Atlanta Police Department. I got hired in April of 2008, and I left the city November 2019.
Now, when you left the department, what were you working? What kind of cases?
At that particular time, I was assigned to the homicide unit, and I was in that unit, in that role, for just under 5 years.
What year did you start with the homicide unit of the Atlanta Police Department?
In March of 2015.
And before working for homicide, what was your role right before then?
Before I was assigned to the homicide unit, I was assigned to the Atlanta Police Special Victims Unit as a detective and as a police officer, and I investigated crimes against children.
Now, I wanted to ask you, were you the lead detective on the murder of T.R. Jones?
Yes, I was.
Can you tell the jury how you came to work that case?
Yes. The City of Atlanta Police Department at the time, we had a homicide rotation. It just so happened that I was atop of that rotation. So anytime somebody lost their life, they would call a detective to respond, and it was my turn to actually respond.
What day did you respond?
I believe the date was September 26, 2015.
And when where did you go to? Where was the crime scene?
I was initially told to go to the intersection of Hank Aaron and Milton. And when I got to that intersection, of course, I saw an accident. And I think the address that I noted in the police report was 40 Milton Avenue.
Now, what part of Atlanta are those addresses that you responded to?
I think at the time it was the Zone 3 district of Atlanta. So that would be more like southeast of the city.
Now, when you got on scene, how many victims were there?
At that location, there was only one victim. That was actually a deceased young lady by the name of T.R. Jones. And it was brought to my attention that there were two more victims, and they were taken to Grady Hospital.
Who were those two other victims?
The two other victims, female front passenger, her name was Shakoya Duncan, and the back passenger was Shannon Jackson.
Now, Detective Griffin, I want to approach you with what's been marked as 1 triple delta papa through 24 triple delta papa. And Investigator Griffin, before you were on the stand, did you have an opportunity to look through those photographs?
Yes, I did.
And what are they?
These are crime scene photographs taken by the crime scene tech who responded at my request.
And are they a fair and accurate depiction of the crime scene photographs for this incident?
Yes, they are.
Your Honor, at this time, the state moves to tender into evidence 1 through 3 triple delta papa and 5 through 24 triple delta papa.
They're admitted.
Now, Investigator Griffin, It's going to come up on the screen before you. I'm going to publish and walk through a few of these exhibits.
Okay.
You also got a couple options behind you. You got a big board there and one behind you. So whichever one works best for you. Thank you. Yes. So I'm going to publish 1 triple delta papa. Now, Investigator Griffin, is this the street that you were mentioning, Hank Aaron and Milton Avenue?
That's correct. That's the intersection that I was assigned to go to.
I'm going to publish the next exhibit. Can you describe for the jury what we see in this exhibit?
This is an overturned vehicle operated by the decedent, Miss Tiara Jones. I forget the year, but it was a green in color. I think it was a Mountaineer, Mercury Mountaineer.
Now, when you first responded, did you know any of the facts and circumstances behind what happened?
No. So as it was initially described to me, they thought it was just an accident. As a result, the hit and run unit came and they responded. So they initially processed the crime scene. And then some officers took note of some defects in the rear lift gate, which they thought it might have been from a projectile. And as a result, they started looking for shell casings, which they found. And because they found that, that's when they called me and asked that I respond.
I'm going to publish the next exhibit. Where were some of the shell casings in relation to the vehicle that was overturned?
So again, if you have the intersection of Hank Aaron and Milton, maybe 50 yards, which is where the accident is. So in between that distance, that's where the shell cases were lined in the street.
I'm going to publish the next exhibit. Now, what type of shell casings were on scene?
I believe we located 12 spent casings. I think the caliber was a .762.
And do you have familiarity as a homicide detective with shell casings and guns that fire them?
Yes, I know enough to know that that came from an assault rifle or an assault rifle pistol, something of that caliber, but it's an assault rifle.
Now, what did you do? I'm going to publish the next exhibit, but ask you a question. What did you do with the shell casings you collected?
Actually, the crime scene technician that responded, she's the one that actually collected them, and then she gave them to me. And what I did was brought them to Atlanta Police, put a barcode on them, and placed them in the property as evidence.
I'm going to publish the next exhibit. Is this a close-up of one of the .762 shell cartridges that you collected?
That's correct.
And this is 12 triple delta papa. Publishing the next exhibit. This is 15 triple delta papa. And going to publish 17 triple delta papa. 19 triple delta papa. 22 triple delta papa. And 24 triple delta papa. Now, Investigator Griffin, with the defects you had mentioned in the vehicle, where were they on the car? The front, the side, the back?
From what I noted, they were in the back near the lift gate.
And were there any firearms that you found on scene?
Yes, I think it was Officer Clayton. He was the first to respond, and he actually found a semi-automatic handgun. I think the caliber was a .45 caliber Springfield.
Where was that .45 caliber Springfield in relation to the vehicle?
As he noted in his report, it was feet away from the vehicle.
Now, after you cleared this scene, did you have any initial leads, or what were your next steps?
No, so the only lead that I had is we had 2 surviving victims, and they were taken to Grady Hospital. So what I did was after I left this crime scene, I went to the hospital to hopefully try to speak to the 2 that were alive.
Were you able to go to Grady? Is that where you went to Grady?
I went to Grady Hospital, that's correct.
When you got to Grady, who did you encounter?
I spoke to the front passenger, Shakoya Duncan, and the rear passenger, Shannon Jackson.
What kind of condition were they in when you met them that day?
Shakoya Duncan, she had a severely injured leg. I think at one point they were talking about it may have had to get amputated, but I'm not sure if that actually happened. So she was in the process of going to have surgery. And Shannon Jackson had, if I'm not mistaken, a lung and a rib injury.
Were you able to speak with them about what happened?
I spoke with both of them briefly. Again, given their condition, I didn't want to have a detailed interview, so I spoke with them briefly.
Now, after speaking with them, what did you do next?
The next thing I did was, of course, try to do some research on the individuals that were inside the vehicle. We call it just a generic search to see if I can find anything about what happened and possibly who done it. And what I was able to find out is that the young man in the backseat, Shannon Jackson.
Objection, Your Honor. May we approach?
Yes.
Investigator Griffin, when you worked homicides in APD, did you ever consult with the APD gang unit?
Often.
What were the circumstances when you would on a case you were working?
The way that our department was worked.
Sustained.
You said this was September 26, 2015. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Did you ever have any consultation with anyone in the Atlanta Police Department gang unit to assist you in this investigation?
I did.
Without saying what they said, when was it that they began assisting you?
Within the first 1 or 2 days of the initial investigation.
And after consulting with them, what investigative steps did you take next?
We went back to the hospital to actually go speak with Shakoya Duncan and Shannon Jackson, and I brought those detectives with me to assist.
Without saying what anyone said on this date, were you able to speak with both of them?
I was.
What other personnel, detectives, were with you when you went to visit them?
With me was Detective Dennis, Detective Gaither, and Detective Edwards.
After that secondary follow-up at Grady, what did you do next in your investigation?
Again, tried to go hand out flyers in the community, just try to elicit any help from anybody. And so again, I spoke to a lot of different people who knew the family of the deceased, and of course knew the surviving victims.
Now, let me ask you this. Were you ever able to establish a location of where that vehicle may have been before where it was found at the crime scene?
Yes, I was.
What was that location?
The address was 1192 Pryor. That is it's like a Chevron, JJ's Chicken, and I think there's another restaurant right there.
Now, were you ever able to, or did you try to get any surveillance from that location?
I did. Part of those investigative steps, myself and another detective went to try to find cameras in all those businesses, and we were able to find some cameras in a few of those businesses over there.
Without saying what anyone said, did you have any information or possible directions to go from your conversations at the hospital before getting that surveillance?
I'm sorry, can you repeat that?
Did you have any, without saying what anyone told you, did you have any possible leads for what you would be looking at in that surveillance video when you obtained it?
Yes, a specific vehicle was of interest to me.
Now, when you obtained that surveillance video, did any specific vehicle stand out to you in relation to the vehicle that T.R. Jones was in?
Yes, specifically a red Camaro.
Now, did you do any investigative work on this red Camaro?
I did.
What did you who had that red Camaro?
I found out that the vehicle was actually owned by Enterprise, and it was rented to a young lady by the name of, excuse me if I mispronounce her name, Archillian Bennett.
Sustained.
Now, Detective Griffin, in your investigation, did an Arshilian Bennett ever come up?
It did.
And did you ever come to learn where she lived?
Yes, I did.
Where did she reside?
An address off of
Your Honor, I'm not asking him what anyone told him. Investigator Griffin, are you familiar with the Trestle Tree Apartments?
I am.
How are you familiar with them as an Atlanta Police Department homicide detective?
Well, specifically with this case, that address popped up, and I drove over there a couple of times.
So you physically went to that address?
I did.
What street is that address?
I don't know the address, but the street is Confederate.
And was that street, and specifically Trestle Tree Apartments, of note to you when you were looking into Arshilian Bennett?
Yes, it is.
Now, after getting that surveillance video, was there any suspects, or let me ask you this. That red Camaro, what was significant about that car in relation to the vehicle that T.R. Jones was in terms of the people in that vehicle or what they did in relation to the vehicle?
Could you say that one more time?
Yep.
I'm sorry.
What stood out to you about, was there anything suspicious about the people in and around that red Camaro that stood out to you?
The people did. The people stuck out to me. Again, just from looking at the surveillance videos, their interaction with Tiara Jones and Miss Shakoya Duncan.
Now, is there any restaurant at that location?
Yes.
What restaurant is it?
The one specifically that was of note is JJ's Chicken.
And was anyone in the vehicle with T.R. Jones inside that restaurant at any point?
Mr. Shannon Jackson.
And were you ever able to locate any other surveillance video other than at that location?
Other than that location, yes.
And did that assist your investigation?
It did.
Can you explain for the jury how it did?
Well, I got a direction of travel that Tiara Jones went. So what I did was drive that route that was explained to me. And any place that I found cameras, I reached out to the place of business to see if we can try to get surveillance footage.
Your Honor, I'm approaching the witness with what's been marked as 25 Triple Delta Papa. Investigator Griffin, do you recognize that?
Yes, I do.
And what is that?
This is a snapshot of a route that I took and I put in my police report.
Is it a fair and accurate depiction of what you created in this investigation?
Yes, it is.
Your Honor, at this time, the state moves to tender into evidence 25 Triple Delta Papa.
It's admitted.
And Your Honor, publishing that exhibit for the jury.
You may.
Now, Investigator Griffin, I want to see if I can find this old school pointer. And Your Honor, if I may, does the court by chance have the wooden pointer up on the bench?
I don't know what happened to that.
That's all right,
Give
Your
it
Honor.
back to me, so,
I will, oh, I found it.
all right.
So, Investigator Griffin, I'm going to hand you this. If you don't mind, you can use this board if it helps you. And so, I want to ask you a couple of things first. And I'm going to try to zoom in to the best that I can.
Yes, sir.
Now, I'm going to orient. Can you show the jury where the crime scene was, where the vehicle was found?
The vehicle was found in this address. This is the address that I put, which is 40 Milton Avenue.
And what is that 1192 prior?
1192 prior, that is where JJ's Chicken is in the Chevron gas station.
Now, what is this blue line that is connecting those two addresses?
This blue line, this is the route that I took from the initial spot where the vehicle was found, meaning the red Camaro. So I drove the route that was explained to me, and I did a dry run to see how long it was going to take me to get from that point all the way to the crime scene.
And what vehicle was Miss Tiara Jones driving?
Miss Tiara Jones was driving the green Mountaineer.
And was the red Camaro at 1192 prior?
Yes, it was.
And I wanted to ask you to orient, do you see a Veneer Avenue on this map?
Yes, I do. It's right here.
Do you see a McDaniel Street?
McDaniel Street, yes, McDaniel Street's gonna be over here.
Now, I'm going to scroll up a little bit. Do you see a Hendricks Avenue?
Hendricks Avenue, yes, I do. Right here.
Do you see a Pryor Street Southwest?
Pryor Street is gonna be on this side.
Do you see it between I-85 and Hendricks Avenue, a Pryor Street?
Yes, this is gonna be Pryor right here.
And do you see at the top, is there a Cooper Street Southwest?
Cooper Street, yes, Cooper Street is right here.
And two to the right of that, what's that street?
Formwell,
And what's to the right of Formwell?
and you have Pryor Street.
And why is it, Investigator Griffin, that, well, let me ask you this. Does this appear to go in a roundabout way?
Yes, it does.
And why is that?
Well, again, if you're familiar with the area, there's many different ways to get to this location. So from my investigation, I was under the impression that the red Camaro went this direction. And I wanted to, again, get a picture of how long it would take to get from this side of town to where I believe people of interest may have resided, back over to the crime scene, which is 40 Milton Avenue.
Was there any other vehicles that caught your attention other than the red Camaro?
Yes, there was a black sedan. I don't know the make and model, but there was a black sedan.
Was there anything from reviewing the surveillance that indicated to you those cars, either the people or vehicles, had similar movements?
It did. It appeared they had similar movements. Again, I wasn't able to definitively prove that, but it appeared that they had similar movements.
Now, what was some other steps in your investigation after you did this test drive route?
Again, my goal was to try to speak to anybody that can help me with any type of information. And we started looking into social media accounts of interest.
You can sit back down if you want to.
Thank you, Your Honor.
Now, Investigator Griffin, was there a specific social media account that became of interest to you?
There was one in particular.
And what was the handle?
I believe it was P92 something. I think it was H, P92H.
Now, in 2015, would Instagram come up in your investigations?
It would.
Or other social media?
It would.
And how would you capture relevant social media investigations you worked?
Twofold. If the account was private, then I would try to obtain some kind of legal process, would be in the form of a search warrant. Or if it was open to the public, I would try to scroll, look at the pictures, look at friends, and just try to capture what I'm seeing by taking screenshots and add them to the case file.
Now, Investigator Griffin, throughout your investigation, did you periodically have either assistance or consultation with either Detective Dennis or Detective Gaither?
Primarily Detective Dennis.
Now, from this social media, were you ever able to identify any suspects that were at 1192 Pryor that you believe could have been involved in the incident?
Yes, I did.
And did you capture or record those social media?
Yes, I did with the screenshots. Like I mentioned, took a screenshot or a snapshot of it and included it in my police report.
Now, I'm going to approach you with 26 and 27 Triple Delta Papa. That is correct.
Siri.
Investigator Griffin, when you get a chance, just look up at me when you're done.
Okay, I've looked at them.
What are those?
These are some of the photographs that I found in that specific social media account. And again, I took a picture of it and included it in my police report.
And did it have, so is there a fair and accurate depiction of some social media you gathered in this investigation?
Yes, it is.
Your Honor, at this time, the state's going to tender into evidence 26 and 27, triple papa.
Triple D.
Excuse
Papa.
me.
All right.
Triple D papa. Yes, Your Honor.
Those are admitted.
Thank you. Now, Investigator Griffin, did you, I'm going to publish first 26 triple delta papa. It should come up on the screen momentarily, and you may need that pointer again if it's nearby. Now I'm going to try to zoom in some on it. And if you can you give me 1 second? Hold on. Okay. There's a slight delay, but it's going to zoom in here in 1 second. So, Investigator Griffin, while that's coming up, can you help orient for the jury people of interest in this investigation that are depicted in 26 triple delta papa?
Okay. Are you wanting me to say their names or nicknames?
Yes, you can say both, please.
Okay. This gentleman right here, Jamal Ward. The young lady sitting next to him is Archillian Bennett. This young man right here, I forget how to pronounce his first name, but his first initial is D. Last name was Lewis. This gentleman right here is Bobby Hardy, aka Smoke. And his nickname, I think, was Murrow. And this young man, I think he had a nickname of Ola Player, something similar to that.
And without saying what anyone said, in your investigation, did you ever speak with who you identify with the nickname Smoke?
Yes, I did speak with Smoke.
And in your investigation, did you ever come to have any information from the surveillance that he was present at that gas station before the vehicle with Shannon Stillwell, T.R. Jones, and Miss Duncan left?
That is correct.
I want to also publish for you what's been admitted as 27 triple delta papa. Okay. While I'm getting this Zoom back up line, I'm going to keep. Your Honor, this may be a.
All right. Thank you. All right. Ladies and gentlemen, I'm going to give you all a limiting instruction at this point. Sometimes evidence is admitted against some parties and not others, or for some counts and not others. When this happens, that evidence can be considered by you, the jury, only as to the party against whom it is offered, and only for the count for which it is offered, and not against any other defendant or for any other count or purpose. In the next part of this witness's testimony, you're going to hear about statements made by defendant Shannon Stillwell, also known as Shannon Jackson. You are to consider those statements only against Mr. Stillwell and only as to count 1. You may not consider those statements as to any other count, and you may not consider those statements in any way in determining the guilt or innocence of any other defendant in this case besides Mr. Stillwell.
Now, Investigator Griffin, did you ever have a third conversation with Shannon Stillwell?
I did.
When was that, time-wise?
I believe it was the 2nd of November, 2015.
And in all your interviews you had with him, in this case, was he a victim, a witness, a suspect? What was he?
No, Shannon Jackson is, matter of factly, a victim in this case.
And when you spoke with him in November, where were you?
In November, I was at Atlanta Police Headquarters. I think the address is 226 Peachtree, if I believe that's correct.
And is that where that interview took place?
That is.
Were you able to get more information in that interview than you were prior?
I was.
Now, do investigators have different interview techniques?
Absolutely.
What is your technique when you're speaking with a witness, a victim, anybody?
Well, I try to be relatable. That's first and foremost. So for the most part, I talk how I would normally talk when I'm not at work. Sometimes I use slang, sometimes I curse, but that's just the way that I speak.
Now, in that interview, can you tell for the jury, did Shannon Stillwell give you any clarity about what happened before they got to 1192 prior?
He did.
Can you describe for the jury how that started? What Shannon Stillwell told you in relation to that?
And specifically what he told me,
Or, what he said about the events prior to arriving at that location?
It was pretty organic, meaning he was just going to go pick up his child, and en route to go do so, they wanted to get something to eat.
And were both Miss Duncan and Miss Jones in the vehicle with him?
That's correct. Mrs. Tiara Jones was the driver, and Shakoya Duncan was the front passenger.
And what did he tell you happened when they got to that location?
When they got to that location, he meaning Mr. Jackson, went inside to get his food. He waited inside for his food to get done. And while he was inside waiting for his food, that's when he took note of the red Camaro and the individuals that were inside of that red Camaro.
Now, did you ever ask him, or did he ever say in that interview that he recognized anybody at the gas station location?
At the gas station, he specifically said he recognized Bobby Hardy, which is Smoke, and Jamal Ward, which is Merrill.
Were those two individuals in that Instagram photograph we had displayed a few moments ago?
Yes, they were.
Now, what did he say in relation to seeing them there?
Again, he noted that they were there, number one, and he noted that Mr. Bobby Hardy actually approached the vehicle and spoke with either Tiara Jones or Shakoya Duncan. Again, he kept making reference to that's where they hang out at. So I got the impression from the interview, he was just aware of them being present.
And did Shannon Stillwell indicate to you that he was friendly, not friendly? Was there any significance to seeing those specific people that day?
Yeah, he was not friendly. Again, I don't want to give the impression that he was like on edge, but he, as he expressed to me, he was just aware of them, and they're not friends, they're not associates. And again, he took note of them, and he brought to my attention another incident that took place.
Now, I want to ask you, what did he say happened once he got, did he ever get his food and walk outside?
He did. So he got his food and walked back to the vehicle. And at that time, that's when Mrs. Shakoya Duncan decided to go into the store that Mr. Jackson had just left.
Okay. And what happened next? What did he say happened once they got in the car?
Once they all finally got back into the car, he said that they drove off. I think the Camaro had left first and went to the left. And when they got into their vehicle, the driver was instructed to turn right, which would be north on Pryor. And they were going back to where he lived.
Now, and Investigator Griffin, got it. I'm going to, now that the technology's back working, I'm going to zoom in just a little bit for you. Can you orient the jury? Is this another social media post that you pulled in this investigation?
Yes, it is.
Now, do you recognize that area?
I do.
What neighborhood is it?
That's the Trussell Tree community.
And who in this photograph specifically was someone that you were looking at in this investigation?
Again, this is the owner of the account. That's Mr. Lewis, and that's Mr. Kelvin Watts, a.k.a. Shell Kel.
And what does that gentleman on the far right shirt say?
It's an A and a B and a G.
And Investigator Griffin, when you were speaking with Defendant Stillwell, did he ever identify for you other people that he believed were either in that red Camaro or close by at the gas station?
Yes, he did.
Who were the people he identified?
He identified Bobby Hardy, Jamal Ward, and Kelvin Watts.
And when you were speaking with him, did y'all do any type of photo lineup?
Yes, a photo lineup was shown.
And what did he describe about what he remembered while they were driving after leaving the gas station, but before any shooting took place?
What he described was seeing the red Camaro coming down at a fast rate of speed. It was probably becoming south on Pryor. And then he said when he turned the corner, he heard a large revving of an engine. And he said he just took note of the headlights, that it looked like the Camaro that he had saw at the gas station.
And did he say he heard a couple, a few, or a lot of shots?
I believe he gave a count of upwards of 20, is what he told me.
Now, after that interview, and that was that in November?
That's correct.
What else did you do in your investigation?
Well, I did obtain warrants for the 3 individuals that the victim identified, but the investigation continues. So, again, we try to wait for cell phone records so they could be analyzed, and again, just making myself available to anybody that wanted to speak with me as it relates to this investigation.
And Investigator Griffin, did you, after you took out the arrest warrants, did you ever become aware of any of the individuals that an arrest warrant was taken out of that were not indicted?
That is correct.
Who was that individual?
Kelvin Watts.
Now, I want to also ask you and show you something very briefly. I'm going to mark this as 29 triple delta papa, and one brief moment, Your Honor. Now, Investigator Griffin, I'm showing you what's been marked as 29 triple delta papa. What is that?
This is my lead supplement that I submitted to the DA's office.
And I'm going to grab that back from you. Thank you. Is it a fair and accurate depiction of your report in this case?
Yes, it is.
Now, after you took out arrest warrants, did you ever come to learn of any part of your report in 29 triple delta papa that publicly got released?
I was.
How did that come about in terms of what publicly in your report was out there that you saw?
Well, I saw a snapshot of my police report with the picture of the victim in that case, Shannon Jackson.
Now, I'm going to approach you with what's been marked as 28 triple delta papa. Do you recognize that, Investigator Griffin?
Yes, I do.
What is that?
Well, it's a snapshot of my police report that I wrote and submitted to the district attorney's office.
And is it any kind of social media?
Yes, there is a social media account attached with it as well.
And is that a fair and accurate depiction of the social media account you saw in relation to the release of your report?
I believe so.
Your Honor, at this time, the state is going to tender into evidence 28 triple delta papa.
Admitted.
I'm going to publish this exhibit, Investigator Griffin, and ask you just a couple questions. Now I'm going to zoom in at the top right. What is the handle associated with this account?
It's going to be YFN. YFN. If you can slide it down just a little bit, please.
Can you see it now?
I can. It'll be YFN BC underscore Nutlife. NUTLIFE.
And on the left-hand side, Who was that a picture of?
That's a picture of the victim, Shannon Jackson.
And is this something from what you just referenced, your report of 29 Triple Delta Papa on the left?
Yes, that's the image from my police report.
And without saying what anything said, was there commentary or comments about this?
There was.
And was the general nature of them positive or negative?
Sustained.
Was this of concern to you when you saw this?
It was for me, yes.
Why?
One, my police report is now being published on social media. And two, again, Mr. Shannon Jackson in this particular case was a victim. So that's concerning because they're insinuating something that I didn't appreciate.
No further questions. Thank you.
All right. Thank you.
Thank you.
Cross.
May it please court, Your Honor. Investigator Griffin,
Yes, sir.
good morning. My name is Max Shard. I represent Shannon Stillwell, okay?
Good morning.
Good morning. At some point, I may ask you about the interview, the November 2nd interview with my client. Can I bring up a transcript? I don't want you to read it, but if you need to refer to it, I want you to have it.
I appreciate that.
Thank you. May I approach?
You may.
So,
Investigator Griffin, you spoke to my client 3 times in regards to this incident, correct?
that's correct. I did.
All right. And you viewed him as a victim,
Yes, absolutely he is.
and you still view him as a victim.
I still do.
Okay. And on direct, you said you try to be relatable. In these interviews that are all recorded, you treated Mr. Stillwell with respect, did you not?
I believe so.
Okay, and I appreciate that. Mr. Stillwell treated you with respect, correct?
Yes, he did.
Okay. You tried to be kind to Mr. Stillwell.
Yes, sir.
I want to talk to you about the facts as you understand them based on your investigation and what Shannon told you in that interview.
Yes, sir.
We're talking about Miss Duncan, Miss Jones, and Shannon Stillwell, who you referred to as Shannon Jackson.
Yes, I apologize if that's not the
No, that's fine. That's fine. In a gray SUV, correct?
I think the color is actually green, but
Green. Okay.
it can be mistaken as gray.
Okay. And what make and model is that car?
It was a Mercury Mountaineer. I don't know the year though.
Okay, that's fine. So they're in a Mercury Mountaineer during this incident.
That's correct.
As you understand it, the lead up to this incident is Mr. Stillwell and Miss Duncan had at that time a 10-month-old daughter together, correct?
That is correct.
Okay. And as you understand from your investigation, the plan was for Miss Duncan to come pick up Shannon, and Shannon was to go watch the baby at his grandmother's house, correct?
That is correct.
And his grandmother lives, I don't want to give addresses, but the south of Grant Park.
I don't remember, but if you say that's what it is, I don't
Okay.
remember. I'm sorry.
A couple miles from JJ's Fish.
Yes.
Okay. And so Miss Duncan had asked Miss Jones to drive her to pick up Shannon on Lakewood Avenue.
That is correct.
Okay. And Miss Duncan and Miss Jones are friends or knew each other prior to this incident.
That's also correct.
Okay, and your understanding is Mr. Stillwell did not know Miss Jones prior to this incident.
As he explained it to me, he did not know Mrs. Tiara Jones.
Okay. So Miss Duncan and Miss Jones is driving her green SUV,
That's correct.
and they pick up Shannon at Lakewood, and they decide to stop at JJ's Fish. It was JJ's Chicken and Fish?
I think it's JJ's Chicken and Fish. Is the
JJ's Chicken and Fish at the corner of University and Pryor, correct?
That's correct.
All right. So, and at JJ's Chicken and Fish, you learned from Shannon that he saw Bobby Hardy. I think he referred to him as Smoke.
That's correct.
And I just want to correct you. I think you said Jamal Ward. You meant Jamal Baines, correct?
No?
Oh, it was Jamal Ward?
That's correct.
Also Merle?
Yes.
Okay. At that location.
1192 Prior. That's correct.
And he saw them going in and out of a red Camaro.
I think it was in and out of the Chevron and back and forth to the car and inside the Chevron.
And he took note of their presence, but he had no interactions with them at all.
That is correct. He did not have any interaction with them.
Okay. And you were able to obtain the surveillance video from the parking lot of the JJ's Chicken and Fish.
That's correct.
And the surveillance video corroborated that information.
That's correct.
Okay. So, your understanding, Mr. Stillwell goes into the store, orders food, waits for the food that he's going to take back to his grandmother's house.
That is correct.
Okay. And at some point, the red Camaro leaves, takes a left. Could you do me a favor? Could you put the map up again, please? Thank you, sir. Yeah, no, it's fine. While they're working to help me, on the surveillance video, you also observed a black sedan.
That is correct.
Okay, and it is an older model black sedan.
Mm-hmm.
And this black sedan on the surveillance video, you tell me, was it interacting with the red Camaro?
Interacting in the sense that people got out and going back and forth, I don't recall. I don't think that's what I saw.
Okay. At some point on the surveillance video, and according to the witness statements, that red Camaro, while Mr. Stillwell, Miss Jones, and Miss Duncan are still at the JJ's, takes a left out of the parking lot and goes south on Pryor, correct?
That's correct.
Okay. And maybe 20, 30 minutes after that car left, the car driven by Miss Jones, the SUV, the green SUV, takes a right out of the JJ's parking lot to head north on Pryor.
That is correct.
Okay. And this route that's depicted on this map is, what is this outline? What does that depict exactly?
Yes. I'm not sure if you want me to tell you what people told me, but
Well, is that a route that you drove, or is that your understanding of the route that the SUV driven by Miss Jones drove?
no. So this is not the route of the SUV. This would be the route of the red Camaro.
Okay, all right, okay. Thank you for that clarification. So the circuitous route is not the route that the SUV driven by Miss Jones drove?
That is correct. I can
Okay.
show you if you'd like me to, but that is not the route.
Okay. The bottom line is your understanding the SUV was traveling eventually to Mr. Stillwell's grandmother's house.
If I'm not mistaken, I thought it was going to his house. I think they had a disagreement. I could be wrong, but I thought he was going to go to his apartment after they got the food, which is back on the over near Four Seasons. I think that's what I noted in my police report.
Okay. All right. Do you disagree that, and I don't want to talk about specific addresses, but
Okay.
Mr. Jackson gave you, Mr. Stillwell gave you the number of his grandmother,
He did.
and he told you he lived with his grandmother.
If I think on two different occasions, yes, he told me he lived with his grandmother, but at another time, he told me he was concerned about getting his house shot up and his grandmother. So I'm not sure if that meant because he lived with his grandmother or if it's two different addresses. But I am of that opinion initially, yes.
Okay. So your understanding is this SUV is traveling in the direction, Miss Jones is traveling a route that was being dictated to her by Miss Duncan.
That's correct.
Okay. And in this route, suddenly a car speeds up behind this SUV that has Mr. Stillwell in the backseat.
That is correct.
Okay. And the engine's revving.
That's correct.
Okay. And there's high definition lights that led Mr. Stillwell to believe that that was the same car he saw in the parking lot of the JJ's.
That's correct.
Okay. And then immediately, well, almost immediately after speeding up behind, gunshots ring out.
That's also correct.
Okay. And there's about 20 shots fired at the green SUV that Miss Jones, Miss Duncan, and Mr. Stillwell are in from this car that's speeding up behind them.
That is also correct.
That green SUV is hit in the rear. What did you say, the rear lift gate?
Like the rear lift gate. That's correct.
Okay, and also the back windshield was shattered, correct?
That is correct.
And according to Mr. Stillwell, upon being hit, the car starts to roll and flip multiple times.
That's correct.
And of course, sadly, you know through your investigation that the driver of the SUV, Miss Jones, was hit in the face with one of the bullets fired from the car that was speeding up behind him.
That's also correct.
Okay. And she lost control of the car.
She did.
Mr. Stillwell told you when the car finally stopped flipping over multiple times, he couldn't breathe, and Ms. Duncan had her injuries, and sadly, Miss Jones was deceased.
That's correct.
Okay. The defects that you observed, you took note of the defects in the car.
I did.
And they were all in the rear.
Yeah, the ones that I took note of, they were all in the rear.
Okay. And that is consistent with the information that Mr. Stillwell gave you.
Yes, it was.
Okay. You collected shell casings.
I think approximately 12.
12 shell casings, and they were all from what kind of gun?
The caliber was a 7.62 caliber.
Okay. And the gun that you found on the scene is not the type of gun that would shoot 7.62 caliber ammunition.
That is correct.
Okay, and there was no other shell casings found on the scene from any other guns.
No other shell casing, just the ones that I mentioned.
There is absolutely no evidence at all that any shots were fired from that green SUV, is there?
No evidence at all.
And you, in fact, not only collected video from the JJ's parking lot, but you also drove the route and looked for, were they city-owned video cameras on the street?
I found out they were owned by the city. That is correct.
Okay, how many different cameras did you find on this?
I'm not certain of the exact number. I might have mentioned it in my police report, but I did take note at that intersection. There was what I thought were security cameras or traffic cameras at that intersection of Milton and Hank Aaron.
Okay, and there's also a traffic light at Milton and Hank Aaron, correct?
That is correct.
Okay. And so, why did you spend your time looking for these surveillance cameras?
Well, again, there was not a lot of people that were willing to tell me what happened or even saw it. So I have to rely on cameras or, of course, the testimony of the witnesses.
Did you view that as an important part of your investigation?
Absolutely.
Did you want to make sure you collected all video in a timely manner?
Absolutely.
All right, great. Okay, the injuries sustained by the three victims in that green SUV. Miss Duncan, who was in the passenger seat, suffered a fractured leg, correct?
That is correct.
And that was, to be clear, that was from the car accident, the car flipping multiple times, not from gunshots.
That is my understanding. It's from the accident.
Okay. My client, Mr. Stillwell, suffered fractured ribs,
Yes, he did.
collapsed lung, and when you went to go see him, he had back injuries. The hospital had to actually insert a tube into his back, correct?
Well, I didn't know the last part, but I thank you for telling me that. I knew about the first two injuries.
And those were all from the car flipping over after Miss Jones was shot and lost control of the vehicle.
That is my understanding.
Okay, and then, of course, Miss Jones sadly lost her life.
Yes, sir.
And that was due to a gunshot to her face.
Mm-hmm.
Shot from behind by that vehicle that was speeding up behind the green SUV.
That's correct.
Okay. I think we established that Shannon, prior to this day, did not know Tierra Jones.
That is also correct.
It is true that in this interview, Shannon repeatedly expressed remorse for what happened to Tierra.
Yes, he did.
He never suggested that what happened was okay in any way, shape, or form.
No, he didn't, which is, again, I think that contributes to the reason why he was willing to speak with me.
And in fact, he requested to write a letter of remorse to Tierra Jones's family.
That is also correct.
And he did so.
He did.
Okay. You discussed a series of incidents that had occurred to Shannon in 2015 in this interview, correct?
One in particular, I'm not sure if there was several, but one in particular.
One and then this one.
That is correct.
Okay, so you discussed, he brought it up to you that someone had shot at him at the green store.
Yes, he did.
And a bullet grazed his forehead.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. And then he in fact told you that people came up to him in a club and said, "You're lucky the gun jammed. Next time it's your ass." correct?
That's correct.
Okay. And then, of course, there was this incident.
That's correct.
At the time of this incident, you discussed what was going on with Mr. Stillwell. Mr. Stillwell denied any involvement in the murder of Donovan Thomas, correct?
I don't think I specifically asked him that question. That wouldn't have been the focus of my interview. I think another detective might have asked him that, but I didn't specifically ask him that. That's not something that I was interested in knowing.
Well, at the time of this shooting, you did ask, when you were with the gang investigators, the name Kenneth Copeland or Woody came up, correct?
That is correct.
Okay. And the truth is that at the time of this shooting of Tierra Jones, Woody was in custody. He was in federal custody, correct? Well, you might not know where he was, but he was in custody.
That's correct. I did find out later where he was. That is correct.
Okay. And you spoke with Mr. Stillwell about the ongoing beef between Kenneth Copeland, Woody, and Shell Kell.
Yes, I did.
Mr. Stillwell referred to that beef as generational beef between those two individuals, correct?
He did. He did.
He described the situation as they shoot at Woody and his people, Woody shoots back, correct?
That's correct.
And Mr. Stillwell was concerned because he felt that people perceived him as Woody's friend.
Yes, that is correct.
And that people were now shooting at him because Woody was in custody and they could not get Woody, correct?
I think I can infer that. I'm not sure if he specifically said that, but I was of the same impression.
Okay. Thank you. I have no further questions. Thank you very much, sir.
Sure. Any other defense attorneys with questions for this witness?
Good morning, sir.
How you doing, sir?
Can I ask you a couple of questions about your efforts to obtain surveillance
Yes.
from businesses? I heard you say that at times it has to be done in a timely manner. I think you adopted that statement when asked for you. Is that
That's
fair?
correct.
Can we just talk about your experiences with video surveillance from businesses for a moment?
Okay.
All right. Do they vary how long the images remain on the hard drive or in the cloud, depending upon the type of system that the business uses?
They do. It depends on the system. Some systems actually are just live feeds, so they're not actually recording. And other devices, of course, will hold it for maybe 1 or 2 days. So it all depends on the actual system and the storage that they have available.
Do you ever see some businesses hold it for more than 1 or 2 days?
Not often, but on occasion, yes. But again, it just depends on their system and the amount of storage that they have available.
Okay. If a surveillance video system holds it for 2 days, let's say, okay? So if it's today and tomorrow, well, let's do it this way. Yesterday and today,
Okay.
okay? So if you run out today, you can get possibly yesterday's and today's is what I hear you saying. Is that?
More than likely, that's correct.
All right. Now let's say tomorrow comes, the 17th day of October 2024. Does the first day drop off and then you can get today and tomorrow? Is that how the systems work in your opinion?
In my opinion and in my experience, yes. So it will override the one that is the oldest. And so that means that the next one should be available.
So it kind of just makes room. It purges the oldest, makes room for the newest, and however long it's been kept for.
In my experience, that's correct.
Of course. All right. I want to thank you so much. Oh, did you ever see one where it saves for 2 days, or it's preserved for 2 days, the images on the surveillance camera, and then at the end of that 2 days, it's just all gone, then another 2 days? Or is it always the purge?
In my experience, it just purge.
Okay. I want to thank you.
Thank you.
Your Honor.
All right. Any other defense attorneys questions? No. Any redirect?
Very brief, Your Honor.
All right.
Investigator Griffin.
Yes, sir.
Cross-examination, you were asked about a prior incident involving Mr. Stillwell at the Green Store.
Yes, sir.
Did he ever talk to you about who was involved in shooting at him there?
I believe he gave a nickname. But I came to later discover who that might possibly be.
And did they have any connection with the individuals that you took out arrest warrants with in this case?
Initially, no, but the other individual that I believe was responsible.
Your Honor, can the jurors be reminded, unless you don't think so, about the same instruction?
Sure. So whatever's about to be said, if it came from Mr. Stillwell, and I don't know if it did or not, can only be considered as to Mr. Stillwell and as to count one.
You may continue, sir.
Yeah, I do want to correct myself. I don't want to insinuate that it came from Mr. Stillwell, but a nickname came up. The nickname, would you like me to provide the nickname?
You may.
The nickname that came,
It came from Mr. Stillwell. I have no objection, but if it came from another source, I believe that would be hearsay.
Your Honor, I understand. Let me ask you this. Do you remember when it was asked about running in, somebody ran into Mr. Stillwell at a nightclub and made a comment?
that's correct.
Where was that nightclub?
I think it's the Compound, if I'm not mistaken.
Who was it that made that comment to him? That he told you, that Mr. Stillwell told you?
He used the nickname of Stewie.
And was that Stewie a nickname that came up in this investigation?
Later on, it did. Yes, that's correct.
And what was, from your investigation, did that Stewie ever appear on any of this social media?
Yes, he did.
And was that individual, who were they associated with on social media?
The individuals that I had pointed to earlier. So there's pictures with Mr. Kelvin Watts and Mr. Lewis.
And in your conversations with Mr. Stillwell, did If Gang ever get brought up?
Well, my conversation with him, no.
Did your investigation that ever come up?
Yes, my investigation, yes, it did.
And in relation to surveillance videos, have you had a lot of surveillance video systems that have came up in cases that you've worked?
Yes.
And on cross, you were asked about how they're saved or how long they are retained. Do you remember that?
Yes, I do.
Is do the surveillance systems and their retention policies that you've encountered in homicides you've worked, are they all the same, or are they different systems and policies?
Well, I want to reiterate, my scope is very limited in terms of my experience with dealing with camera systems. Just in the cases that I've worked, they all vary based on, depending on the actual system in place.
Thank you, Investigator Griffin. No further questions.
Thank you.
Any recross? All right. Thank you for your time, and you are excused. Call your next witness.
Yes, Your Honor. The state calls investigator